Now, my friends on TalkSport and Talk Radio, we'll be live till 5. As you've heard all evening, Newcastle have moved out of the bottom three with a huge win over fellow strugglers Everton in Frank Lampard's first Premier League game in charge of the Toffees. Despite going behind to Jamal Lascelles' own goal, Newcastle responded within 108 seconds through another own goal as Mason Holgate returned the favour by scoring into his own net. It ended Newcastle 3, Everton 1. And there's no doubt that Frank Lampard has a bit of a mountain to climb. There are challenges ahead aplenty for the new Everton boss. Let's get the thoughts of Thomas Robertson from the excellent Toffee Blues podcast, who joins us now. Good morning, Thomas. So, congrats for the weekend and the FA Cup win, and commiserations for last night. How did you feel about last night's game? I mean, obviously going ahead, there's a lot to be worked on, a lot that needs improving. What are your thoughts initially about what Frank Lampard should be doing? Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning. Yeah, there's obviously plenty to be worked on. I think Saturday was kind of the immediate manager bounce that we all needed. It was at a home game as well, so it was tremendous atmosphere in it, and it went well. We saw signs of improvement there, but look, this was almost very realistically going to happen following the Benitez era. We don't really have the kind of system in place yet to consistently create chances without moments of brilliance, which we lose a lot of it when Demarai Gray went off injured. So it's a tricky thing to say, because obviously the FA Cup was such a fantastic result. And the Newcastle result was, well, dreadful basically, because it's dragged us back into the relegation zone. Well, not the zone, sorry, but the relegation battle. And It seems now like obviously there's plenty for Lampard to work on, but we saw glimpses of it on Saturday, of the improved kind of attacking play, the pressing play. But look, the atmosphere at St James Park was clearly too much for the players. They kind of buckled under it after 15, 20, 30 minutes. Basically, we weren't in the game for large portions of it, and it was very disappointing, but not entirely surprising considered Lampard's only been in charge for a week.
You've also got Norwich in action tonight. Now, you have got a game in hand already on Norwich. There'll be two games after tonight, but I think you've been very frank with this. I mean, you're fifth from bottom, which means I think the relegation battle must very much be on, do you think?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is now. I think we've kind of teetered on the edge of it for the entire season, basically, and there's been a lot of questions, are we in a relegation battle? Are we too good to go down? I absolutely don't think we're too good to go down, considering the inconsistencies in our squad especially. But then I think we are now in a relegation battle, considering we have to play Newcastle again. And if they perform like they did against us last night, then there are going to be major problems. So I think, look, we are definitely in a relegation battle now. I think we've got all the capabilities of getting out of it. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom, which maybe a couple of other clubs might be thinking at this point, but we have the ability to get out of it. I don't think we're too good to go down, but we definitely have the players to, I think, beat three of the teams that are currently below us in the table.
I know you don't want my sympathy, but I know all about relegation battles as a long-term West Ham fan. We're not troubled by it this season, which makes a very pleasant and surprising change for us. And one of the things that used to really, I find, draining, debilitating, was starting to worry about the performances of the teams around us. Now, Leeds are in action tonight. They're just above you. And again, it gets to that stage where you start to think you're actually focusing on other teams' results as well as your own. You said you think there are three teams worse than you. Who would they be? I mean, Burnley seem to be, although they got a point last night, seem to be the real strugglers this season.
Yeah, I actually think Burnley are probably the main struggle this season. It seems like Sean Dyche has managed to pull off a miracle, but we've seen teams in the past, the likes of Sunderland, the likes of Newcastle, the likes of yourselves, West Ham, that sometimes it just kind of gets too much and you have to go back down to come back up again, and that can happen, and I do see Burnley as that kind of side. I think Watford have obviously made a very smart appointment in Roy Hodgson. I maybe think it's a bit too late considering the season that they've had already, and it would take a lot to turn them around. Although they did keep their clean sheet in what feels like forever, I do feel like they are a side that are worse than us. And Norwich, considering the bounce back that they have had in the past few weeks, I do wonder if they'll maybe eventually run out of steam. I think they've had a brilliant bounce and they are on a decent run of form, but who knows if that will, continue itself, considering the squad that they have. I think Newcastle have recruited well, so I'm now kind of very wary of them. I'd imagine Brentford will probably be a side that will get dragged into it. Seeing their performance on Saturday especially, I think they've obviously had a fantastic season so far, and I'm not sure anyone expected them to be where they are, but I can see them definitely being in the battle come the end of the season. But as I mentioned at the start there, just Burnley, Watford and Norwich are probably three of the sides that I think we should be better than this season.
And you've got Leeds next, I think, on the 12th, which is going to be a tough one as well. I mean, what are the main concerns for you? Is it defence? Do you think, is that where the money should have been spent? Is that where it really is weak at the moment for Everton?
I think the defence has definitely been a problem for a couple of years, considering I would say Yerry Mina's our best centre-half, but he never seems to be able to keep fit, and he seems to have picked up another injury in the Newcastle match. So I think defence is a problem, and switching systems a lot maybe doesn't always help. We haven't played a lot of matches with a 5 at the back system. We signed a couple of fullbacks in January, and we've yet to see Nathan Patterson and Mikolenko. His first 3 starts as an Everton player came under 3 different managers, so it's all been chaos for him. So he's also still relatively unknown. But the defence is definitely a tricky part at the moment. But as it is for so many of the teams around us, I think we have to play to our strengths, which has to be our attack at the moment, considering Calvert-Lewin's just come back. Young Anthony Gordon, Damari Gray, they've both had fantastic seasons, and Richarlison, of course. So we have to play to our strengths. It's obviously too late now to improve the defence in terms of personnel, but we have to just play on the front foot, I think, and use the players who are best to us.
And huge focus on Everton, not surprisingly, because of some of the, high-profile, but dare one say controversial signings, including, of course, Dele Alli, who ran out for you guys last night. What did you make of that signing? What did you make of his performance last night?
I think it was a sign that made a lot of sense. Lampard has been quite vocal in how he thinks he's a fantastic young player, and maybe hasn't been used tremendously in the past couple of years, but obviously has that potential that we've seen. So I think that the signing made a lot of sense. Just try and get the most out of him. He didn't have a fantastic debut, but look, the man's barely played consistent football in the past few seasons, really. So I wasn't really expecting that sharpness from him straight away, and he was kind of thrown into it considering he had to come on because of an injury to Damari Gray. Maybe he wasn't entirely warmed up at the time, but look, Dele Alli's the kind of signing where it's going to take time for him to adapt back to playing a lot of football again, and he's a confidence player clearly, and when he gets that momentum, that's when he'll definitely improve. So I won't read too much into his debut, but I think the signing made sense, but I look forward to see what he does for the rest of the season.
Okay, so it sounds, without putting words in your mouth, it sounds that for you at the moment, a success this season would be to remain in the Premier League. Is that putting it too strongly?
It's potentially too strongly. I think, that has to be the goal now, but I'd prefer not to be dragged into this relegation battle.
Sure.
And we've obviously had aspirations of Europe in the past couple of seasons, and maybe a couple of people had them going into this season, but we don't want to be dragged into this coming in at the last few games of the season. And that is the goal. I want to be, safe within a reasonable amount of time. Do I think that'll happen? Maybe not at this point, but look, I think staying up is the absolute bare minimum. If we got relegated, it would be a disgrace. So I want to see us kind of get away from this relegation battle as soon as possible.
And how about your chances in the FA Cup? Again, I know you'll be realistic about this, but it is a cup competition, and as we know from past FA Cups, pretty much anything can happen, and often has.
Yeah, anything can definitely happen, and if we keep getting home draws, I think that's going to be massively playing into our advantage, as we saw the atmosphere against Brentford on Saturday, and the next match being against Boreham Wood, of course, is a match we should win. Obviously, it's always going to be a banana skin coming up against a team in non-league, but look, if we keep getting those home games, and if we get past Boreham Wood, which we definitely should, considering the quality we have, who knows what can happen. We haven't had a decent cup run in quite a few years now, and it would be good to see, because I think it would provide confidence going back into the league as well. But the league has to be the priority, and if we have a good cup run as well, and potentially go far, I'm sure no one would turn up their noses against that.
Talking to Thomas Robertson here from the Toffee Blues podcast. I like talking to podcasters, Thomas, as well, because I think you guys get the feel for what your fellow fans are thinking. What is the overall mood, would you say, at the moment at Everton? It's well known as being a kind of very tight club, a family club, a very loyal club. Is that loyalty being tested and stretched almost beyond endurance at the moment? I mean, you've had a challenging few seasons, have you not?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case. The loyalty will always be unwavering, but the seasons that we've had basically since Mashiri took over have been very difficult, and there have been fan protests, not against Mashiri himself, but against the way that he spends his money, and against the way that he appoints people onto the board and around the club has been kind of mistaken for a while. But it is definitely being tested, and I think it's going to be tested way more before the end of the season. I don't think this is the worst that it gets, but the loyalty will remain unwavering. I'm certain of that, and I think the fans will stay behind the team. The opposition to the board will continue towards the end of the season and going into next season, I'd imagine, if changes aren't made. But yeah, they'll stay behind the team.
And how did you feel, and what were you hearing about the appointment of Frank Lampard?
I'm happy about the appointment. I think it makes a lot of sense considering there aren't actually too many options around at the moment, which is the problem we had in the summer. We ended up with Benitez, which was a disastrous choice in the end. But Lampard's a young and exciting manager who definitely has something to prove after he got sacked from Chelsea. I'm sure he would have liked to stay a lot longer at that job, but he's an exciting manager. It's obviously kind of slightly apprehensive considering that he has been sacked after one or 2 years in his previous jobs, and I hope he's learned a lot. He's changed his backroom staff, which may have a massive difference. We'll have to see. We've brought in the likes of Clement, who's had a fantastic kind of assistant career. So I'm excited. I think there is some caution around, but he plays the kind of football that the fans at Goodison want to see, and it's an interesting appointment.
Now, he had a remarkable club career, of course he did. First of all at West Ham and then at Chelsea. He's also somebody who has, I think, done remarkably in management, particularly at Derby County. And there's somebody else who had a great club career and has also done remarkably well at the moment in the face of huge challenges at Derby County with a connection to Everton, who may be around over the next couple of seasons. Wayne Rooney. What would your thoughts be on that maybe in 2 or 3 years down the line? Wayne Rooney running Everton.
I definitely think it's an interesting proposition. Obviously, it looks like we went in for him this time. Well, look to interview him anyway, but I don't blame him for not wanting to leave Derby halfway through the season. He's doing a fantastic job there, and what are they, 4 points off safety now? So I can see why he wanted to stay. In the future, I definitely think it's an option. I still think he's got a lot more to prove as a manager because the situation that he's found himself in is basically unprecedented. So it's very hard to judge the job that he is doing, but he seems very focused on that job at Derby. Frank Lampard's our manager, hopefully for the next few years and beyond if he can find that consistency. So yeah, Rooney makes a lot of sense, but not quite yet.
I mean, I've never met the man, and I've never really had views on him apart from his excellence as a player. But I've been lucky enough to see an early copy of that Rooney documentary that's dropping on Amazon Prime this Friday. It's an absolutely astonishing watch because you get the sense of somebody who has, you know, we all change as we get older. Somebody who's taken stock and is so ambitious about the future. I mean, I presume you'll be watching that when it comes out on Friday, Thomas.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at it. He seems to have changed a lot as he's become a manager, hasn't he? There's plenty of these clips about how calm he is and how relaxed he is on the training ground, which is fascinating to see. But yeah, I'm sure that documentary will be a great insight. And
can we ask you to risk a prediction for the end of the season? Where do you see yourself in the table, realistically?
I think, pushing up to mid-table has to be the goal now, just to try and secure that safety. It's very difficult to make a prediction. I'll predict us not to get relegated. I'm hoping we won't be in this battle for too long, so the kind of 14th, 15th, above that has to be the goal now towards the end of the season.
And kicking on for next season, obviously you're hoping money's going to be spent wisely over the summer. What will be your aspirations for next season, Thomas, or is it too far in the future to predict?
I think at the moment it's probably too far to predict, considering we have to just focus on this season now and get rid of the predicament that we find ourselves in, and we'll have to see how much money we can obviously spend in the summer, considering we didn't spend much in the past summer and we did spend a bit in January on the new fullback. So it'll be interesting to see what there is actually there to spend, and it's so hard to make predictions for next season. I just want to see us safe this season, pushing up to mid-table, and then we can take stock again in the summer.
Thomas, really appreciate your time this morning, mate. You really enjoyed our conversation. Very measured view there of Thomas Robertson, Everton fan, of course, but also somebody with a thoughtful football head on his shoulders, talking from the Toffee Blues podcast perspective to me, Paul Ross, new guys on TalkSport and Talk Radio. The Toffee Blues available from all good podcast providers. And you heard that interview right here with me, Paul Ross, and Thomas Robertson on TalkSport and Talk Radio, where my friends were live till 5.